Richard trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease.
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Pod Street Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Pod Street Bullies. My name is Derek.
And I'm John. What's going on, everybody?
And per usual,
Matt
we have
swap,
one
Matt
with us.
Matt swap.
Take a guess as to which one.
Oh, the one that can string a sentence together, baby. Here I am.
Did you listen to the last episode? Hoagie was a
I
brand
did.
new man. I could not believe
No,
it.
he actually did pretty well. I was impressed.
Right?
But I think
his
Hoagie and I have
strongest
like a
episode.
restraining order. We cannot be on the same Zoom within 7 business days of each other.
Well, that's an internal affair. We're not going to get into that tonight. But anyways, we got a visitor as well. Nope. Okay. All right.
We got a spectator, folks.
Spectator. Well, that makes one of them. And so we want to get into a little bit of some training camp talk. We want to talk a little bit about the preseason as well, given the beatdown that was dealt to the Flyers the other night. It's going to be a somber conversation, fellas. But first, let's get into training camp here. In general, and we're just going to get straight to it. John, I want you to tell me how much stock you're putting into what you're seeing, what you're hearing, everything in regards to this team in training camp.
Not a lot. I think I'm kind of like scarred from when we used to work for Philly Sportsnet, and there used to be a few people that would put way too much stock into training camp, and it was like we'd sign somebody to a tryout, and the next thing you know, not only are they going to make the team, they're going to be in the top 6. And I just think that, like, for the most part, the roster's set. I think we'll get a little bit into certain roster battles, but I do think for the most part, the roster's set. It's like you want to see what some of the kids can do, but it doesn't really sway my opinion either way. I'm just not going to get too upset about a loss or Cam York sucking wind in the bag.
Good thing.
I'm going to save my upset for losses for the plenty that we will have in the regular season. Thank you very much.
Pace yourself there. Pace yourself.
Right.
Same question to you, Matt Casey. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. It's tough to put too much stock in the preseason from a game standpoint. Now, I will say that, you know, what we're getting out of this is some clarity on the guys, and namely Sean Couturier. The Atkinson thing, I'm a little like, wait, you're not putting him in, but I'm going to hold judgment until the end of the week.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fact that somebody like Couturier, who's had so many question marks over the last year, almost year and a half at this point, you know, that he made it through a game and feels okay. Like, I think that's like a hurdle that we can now latch on to a little bit and say, okay, that's at least positive news. But in terms of like results from like preseason games, I can't put stock into that.
Right.
No, absolutely not.
Our team is so systems based, and you know, I'll worry about that in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Not to mention the roster that we're seeing right now is not what the roster is going to be opening night. You're going to see some kids battling it out for spots, which we will get into here in a little bit. However,
it's like finding love at Burning Man. Like, it's completely experimental.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, hey, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Right. Might burn a little.
Yeah, like, but much to
Tingle in
Matt
the
Casey's
wrong
point
places.
there, I agree in regards to Couturier and Atkinson. Like, I will put stock in seeing them in camp and how they're doing. However, like you said, results of preseason games, that type of stuff, like, I don't really care. I want to see development. I want to see camp battles. I want to see guys pushing themselves to be better and better and better. That's the primary focus for camp for a lot of these guys, because they're young kids. They're going to want to prove their worth, and that's the best way to go about it. Now, I would like to see Atkinson definitely in probably like, let's say 75% of the preseason games. You got to see it. I'm not convinced that he's fully healthy until I see Cam Atkinson skating in a game as opposed to practice. We've seen guys practicing all the time. He's practicing. Nolan Patrick practiced. Sean Couturier practiced. Guess what? Neither of them played. So that's
Nolan Patrick practiced, then still got a Stanley Cup ring. Good for him.
right. Good for that guy.
Jerk store.
Second. Yeah, whatever.
I got a question. No, I got a question. What do you put more stock in though? Someone outperforming expectations, like overachieving, or someone not meeting expectations?
Ooh, a lot of caveats to this one for me.
I would say overperforming, quite frankly.
You put more stock into or less?
I think I put more stock into it. Because there's arguments for both, I suppose, but like, especially for some of these young guys, and so let's take a Forrester or a Brink or whoever it may be. If they blow the doors off whatever games they're going into, I'm putting a lot of stock into that. Now,
Sure.
I think on the flip side, if you're looking at veterans or guys who are in their second or third year in there who are underperforming, it's like, ooh, maybe maybe it got to them a little bit. Maybe they think
Right.
So I think it's kind of a matter of where they are in the career. If that
We also have a sample size too, where it's like, okay, they can still get to what we've seen before.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, I'll play devil's advocate here. I'm on the flip side of that. I'm putting more stock into the guys that are underperforming, just solely based off the fact that, especially if it's a veteran, it's a guy that might just be fed up with the way camp's being run, might be fed up with the organization, whatever it might be. And I'm going to extremes here, but somebody that just, I don't know, like when it comes to training camp, you got to prove your worth there. That's the proving ground for a lot of these kids, and you got to be able to keep up with them. So I like seeing guys blow the doors off the place. I like seeing that. I think it's great, but it is preseason, like we had talked about putting stock into things. Like, I'm just not gonna trip all over myself when these guys are having great preseasons, thinking, oh my God, he's the next, whatever it is, Claude Giroux or Wayne Gretzky. Like, no, like
I'll never forget, like, it was probably like 2007. It must have been that really horrible year, like the 06-07, but like preseason, there was a guy named John Sim, and he like blew the doors off in preseason. I was like, oh, this guy John Sim, like, wow, what a stud. And then like maybe played a handful of games, then got hucked, and like it came out. I want to say it was Hartnell, or like, I don't know who it was, but they were like, oh, he was the worst teammate I've ever had in my life. I wanted to like kick his ass. And so it's like, you never really know.
right.
Well, the
But
thing
John,
is, too,
where do you land on that though?
well, it's actually really hard for me because I think like I would go more the Derek side, where it's like people overperforming, I tend to like shy away from, because I always feel like a player who is like flirting with the NHL or in the NHL will catch lightning in a bottle at least once.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you look at Morgan Frost, his first 2 games, didn't he score like 2 or 3 goals?
He had that hellish goal against Florida against
Right.
Bobrovsky of all goalies.
There's all these moments where it's like, oh God, they've got it, and they end up kind of like simmering down. But to your point, Casey, when I think of like veterans and like tendencies, like if I think like Ristolainen, if all of a sudden he went back to like Risto smash and just like that guy all over the ice, like that I'd put a lot of stock into, because it's like, oh God, he's reverting back to what he was before he became successful last year.
Sure.
Right.
I think one of the other things I want to bring up with training camp overall, and I can't remember. I watched a couple of Couturier interviews, but it may have been the Lawton interview that Martinez did today, where they were talking about kind of the camaraderie of that, basically the rope skate, I guess they have.
Right.
And I do think that that's important. And like, look, I'm not going to put a ton of stock into the game, but like half these guys will not be here in 2 weeks. But the fact that they brought everyone in, it's like, you guys are going to get your ass kicked, and it's not going to be fun, but you know what? You do it together. You don't complain, and like really reinforcing, I guess, that quality in the standard. I know we overuse that, but really reinforcing that from the get-go. And so that way, the young guys coming in on their first training camp are like, okay, once I'm 19, I know what to expect, and I really sucked wind on that. And the fact that Torts added more on this year, I think he added like 2 more laps. So it's like, you sick bastard. Come on.
Right. You got to test these kids though. Like you've got to test them early and often, because if you do that, like I think back to the movie Miracle, where all they did was just suicides. Like you learn so much about a person. Well, I'm sorry.
Insensitive prick.
Line skates, whatever. I don't know. You know what? I don't care. I called them suicides, where they run those, and you find out a lot about a person by what's that? You skate them. They skate them. Yeah, whatever.
What'd you say? Run them?
Yeah, he runs them.
Yeah. Well, I played basketball, and we called them suicides.
Torts makes him put on basketball sneaker and runs on the ice.
I mean, that'd be entertaining. I'd pay to see that. But to my original point, you find out a lot about a person and their perseverance when it comes to those types of skates. So, testing them early and often with that, I think shows you the type of player that you can expect when it comes to the regular season and just all around person too. So, I mean, skate them, run them. I don't care. Get them moving.
I do think, kind of to segue to the next thing, like the one performance from the preseason game that we do need to take a little stock into is Cal Peterson, Mr. Redemption himself, letting in 5 freaking goals. Oh boy.
Oh my God.
I will say last night I put the kids to bed, and it was 7:30 or so. I'm like, oh man, there's hockey on. I knew it was streaming on there, and so I go on to my app on my phone, and it was like 4-0. And I was like, what time? I was like 7 minutes in. What happened? And I'm like, I'm not going to do this to myself. Didn't even look at it again.
Well, the thing that cracks me up is it's like everybody's like, confidence. With Cal Peterson, it's got to be about regaining his confidence. So it's all about regaining confidence. Well,
swell start.
I don't know how you regain after that. I mean, that's brutal. To give up 4 in the first 5 minutes of the first preseason game. Like,
but
how do you come back from that?
Like, maybe I don't know. How do you keep him in?
Well, I mean, you see if he can bounce back, I guess. Like, you have to.
That's 4 goals in 5 minutes. Like, Jesus Christ. Any regular, I understand it's preseason, it's a bit different, but like any regular season game, that goalie's getting yanked.
It's bad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
That's
how. So I didn't actually watch the goals. Like, were they his fault or was it like a team?
I couldn't tell you.
I couldn't tell you either.
Yeah.
Still a lot
on
of
the
goals.
Surface. Yeah. So this is mostly surface talk, but like 4 goals, 5 minutes, doesn't matter what sport. That's bad.
That's bad.
That's pretty bad. I don't know. Like, I'm looking up and down the lineup now in regards to who New Jersey had on the ice, and I'm noticing just much more talent than the Flyers had on the ice.
Did they ice a lot of like their normal
Holla was out there, Timo Meyer, Palat, McLeod, Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier. They had,
to be fair though,
Dougie Hamilton was out there too.
To be fair, these would be the people he'd have to face in the regular season.
True, but he's also not going to have the defense that was in front of him.
Sure.
Like there's
Yes, I get that.
Still not encouraging by any means, though.
No, if you were to ask me, hey, would you rather lose 6-0 or win 6-0? Yeah, I'd rather win 6-0. But it's like I don't want to freak out yet. But if we're losing every preseason game 6-0, yeah, I'm gonna be worried.
Is anybody super upset though if Cal Peterson isn't the backup goalie? Like, to me, I want Urson to win it, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
he'll get the playing time we all want him to get. Like, it's going to be a 1A, 1B platoon type, likely.
I hate to say it. Like, this isn't a league where you go and refine yourself. Like, this isn't a journey to self-reflection. This is like perform or you're done. And you know what? You got to build your way back up in there. And I think given what we saw last year in the NHL as well as the AHL from Urson, and the fact that Torts is very clearly a fan of his, I think you got to put him in. And the fact that, like, and then you have Sandstrom, like right now, Peterson is like, he's below garbage right now. Right. Like, how do you put him? He's maybe going to get 1 more preseason game, maybe 2. I don't know, but you got to put Carter in there. You got to get Urson in there. Like, you got to give these guys some time. Although Carter didn't play a game last year, if I'm remembering right. He didn't play.
I don't think he did either.
So I don't know.
I mean, if this was Fletcher world, right, and like we acquired Peterson because he wanted Peterson to be the backup to Carter Hart, like it's a whole like panic meter. The Flyers didn't acquire Cal Peterson being like, yeah,
They
he's
wanted
going to
him.
be the backup to Carter Hart. They acquired him so
salary
they could get
for a
some more.
trade. Yeah.
Right. So they
Right.
don't care if they play him.
No.
Right. Neither do I. I want
Yeah.
Urson. I'd rather Urson. Like overall, though, in terms of game wise, like I think, and I'll say it now, I like the fact that we saw Cam York get 22 minutes. I like the fact that Walker got 21. Like I think I want to see what he does. Like, Helga Grand's got 19 minutes too. Like
I forgot about that guy.
yeah, I want to see these guys. I want to see them play. I want to see what they're made of.
But you didn't watch the game.
You're right, but I can look at a stat sheet and right then and there, I know. That guy's
Have
good.
you seen enough, sir?
Look, between the stat sheet, between the heat graphs, you know, the weather maps, I think I've got it down, guys.
I have to like make a promise to myself though. I'm like, do not put any stock in these games. Don't put any stock until we actually get a team, 25 people who are actually really plugging away and learning systems and things.
And even at that, how many seasons in a row is it like the first 2 games are like not looking bad?
And then it's all downhill from
And then
there.
10 more games, like, all right, what are we going to talk about the rest of the season?
All right. I again with the ice time argument here, I like seeing Couturier get higher end ice time for the forwards too. Frost looked like he was right where he was at with 15 minutes. Forrester got some good time, like almost 14. Like it's tough to really gauge anything off of a shitty loss like this. I mean, because this overall team effort wasn't there. So again, we talk about putting stock into things. I'm not going to put a ton of stock into this in regards to the skaters, but certainly looking at Cal Peterson and saying, what was that?
Yeah. I also think you do have to put a little bit on the skaters. I would say it's like,
Sure.
A goalie could be horrific. It could be a shooter tutor. And if you're still not coming out to play, like that's telling if you're letting up 4 goals in the first 5 minutes. And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
6-0. There's nothing good from anybody.
No.
Like it's a full team effort to be awful.
Right. Let's hope that's the end of that, though. Jesus.
Yeah.
I sure hope so.
Get that out of their system in the preseason.
Give me a respectable 3-0 loss.
Like, that was one thing last season. Like at least we were in games and then lost. It wasn't like the year before where it was like, hey, it's 1-0. It's 9-0.
But I will say, you know what? I looked at some of the other scores, like Panthers beat Predators 5-0 last night. There was another one. Jets beat Oilers 5-0 last night.
One
so
team
it's
shows up to play and the other doesn't.
So what you're saying is the NHL is fixed.
100%.
I think so.
Get that guy on the show. I got to make some money. All right. So in keeping with basically everything pretty quick here, we're going to get to the battles here in training camp. We're going to talk about who's battling out for what spots, who we think is going to make it, who's going to end up opening night. We'll probably have these discussions as the preseason rolls along as well, all the way up until the first regular season game. But I'm going to start with you, Casey. Name me a training camp battle right now that has your attention.
So I'm going to say, besides the goalie, which I think we already talked about, but
it's still the most intriguing to me, though.
All right, so we'll stick with that then. I think that is the backup position is the most intriguing battle,
right, to
me. And even after one game, I think that this is Urson's to lose. I don't think that we saw enough from Sandstrom. I'm getting them all mixed up. From Sandstrom last year. Like he had the opportunity to take reins and really like pony up, and like he didn't do it. Urson did so in the AHL. So like right now, Peterson's a non-factor as far as I'm concerned. So right now, I think that is the most interesting battle is which way Torts leans on that one.
It is interesting though, because like I wish I was as convinced as you, Casey, that Peterson won't be the backup goaltender. But like if you just look at like money and contract purposes, right? It's like mathematically and all that jazz, like Urson does make the most sense to start in Lehigh Valley and get like the lion's share, where I'm just I'm a little worrisome that'll be like, well, we put Cal Peterson behind Carter Hart, understanding that Carter Hart's going to get most of the starts. Let Urson get, his fair share of AHL starts before we bring him up.
Okay.
Because
you want him playing? Is that what you're?
Well, I mean, I can see the Flyers making that decision. I almost feel like maybe that decision's already been made. Where I could see the rationale behind that, but I'm with you in terms of just talent and potential. I want to see Urson play, but I do really see a world where Cal Peterson is the backup goalie to start the season.
I mean, here's my
I think
thing.
That'd be a mistake, though. I really do.
I think especially. All right, so let's play that out for a second. So for him to do that, we know that Torts' barometer does not apply to what public opinion and the cash salary or the cash should be. He's basing it on talent. Now, if Peterson does his next outing and boom, does a 2-period shutout, cool. Okay, let's have that conversation. But right now, the one person we know who is the worst at their position on the roster is Cal Peterson. After one game. And so I would put Sandstrom ahead of him right now. But the other thing is with Peterson, which is really interesting, is I assume he's not waiver exempt, but it's I dare someone. I double dare someone.
Yes.
Right. We were also scared about Sandstrom getting claimed off of waivers. And then towards the end of last year, we're like, nah, you can take him. Right. Now, same thing with Cal Peterson. It's take that $5 million off our books. We're cool with that. Yeah. But I'm of the mindset competition breeds success.
Right.
I think that Sam Urson has much more to gain in being a 1B as opposed to the starter in Lehigh Valley. Yes, he'll get the ice time. He'll get the experience down there, which is fantastic. However, if he's got it made up in his mind that he's the 1B and he's going to end up succeeding Carter Hart, then that's the mindset he's going to take into it, and that's going to be a chip on his shoulder. If he has the right mindset and he can go into camp thinking that he's going to go into the season with something to prove, and if he ends up our starter by the end of the year, again, obviously I'm blowing this out of proportion. However, there's a very real possibility that he could push Carter Hart for the 1A position in net.
So here's my only pushback with that. I think from a developmental standpoint and the idea of 1B, in order for it to be a 1A, 1B situation, they would have to split the starts somewhat equally. Obviously Carter Hart would get more than Urson, but I think Urson would have to play every 4 games. I think that what it comes down to is, are the Flyers ready to put him with that amount of workload in the NHL? And if they're not, is it in their best interest to let him have more of a workload in the AHL as opposed to him playing every 5th or 6th game in Philadelphia? Because I think you have to remember, Briere, Jones, everybody's it's all about development. We're going to be patient with this, where it's that wouldn't shock me if they favored that route over, because I don't think he's done enough to be the 1B.
Right. But who has on this team? That's the thing.
But can it just be? But it could just be starter and backup. And in that case, I don't think Urson is the guy to do it because his frequency wouldn't be as.
Here's my retort to you, John. Is that
retort all over me?
I feel like Urson last year handled a huge workload in the AHL to the point where he was basically worn to the nub, like Andy Dufresne's rock hammer, and and he, by the end of the season, he was worn out. It's okay, how much more do you need to see from this guy for him to drive his team to the playoffs and then get there? And then on the flip side, when he was in the NHL, he went 7 games without a start, and then went in and had a couple hell of a days.
Very respectable performances.
And so I feel like at some point,
right? No, I get you.
The development's got to lead to something, and it's sorry that Carter's here, but it's it would be great if Carter was getting if it was a 3-to-1 ratio. Last year, I think it was much higher than that, though. It was Carter 10-to-1 or something. It was something ridiculous.
And I'm looking at development a little bit differently because, like, I understand development wanting to ease the guy into a position, and that's fine. However, in development, I'm more worried about being competitive at the highest level.
Right.
I
He
guess
just needs
is
to
the best way
play,
to put it.
though. That's
Right. I understand that, but I mean, to Matt Casey's point too, like he showed us he could handle the load in Lehigh Valley. So,
right.
like, I'm not gonna be concerned too much with that, but I would much rather see him push himself to compete at the NHL level than to just be, I don't want to say become just complacent as the AHL starter, but like,
Right.
you know what, you catch my
No,
drift?
I get what you mean, and I also think that another thing that factors into it is, do the Flyers have some sort of idea of what Carter Hart's future is going to look like with the organization? Now, I'm not talking about Hockey Canada at all. I'm
Right.
talking about just in terms
You
of
still have to
contract.
factor it in, but I understand where
I'm
you're
talking
coming
more
from.
of contract, and do they think that he's going to be with the team long term? And if
I think they do.
Carter Hart,
Yeah, I think they do. Well, I think they have an idea as to if he's going to factor in because we
Got it.
saw today, like the kid they drafted, Bjornsson, he just signed his ELC.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean he's going to play with the
Right.
Phantoms or the Flyers, but Urson as well. I mean, Kolosov, they drafted him a year ago. Like,
right.
Fedotov, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, and I've
another
said
Russian guy.
over and over again that the Flyers look like they're preparing for a time without Carter Hart.
Right.
And I think that, like, if that's the case, then you go more, okay, then we're gonna go one, every third start Urson's gonna play because we're preparing for a world without you.
Right.
So I think that there's so many factors that go into play, but if to me still, if it's just your traditional backup,
Right.
where it's like every once in a blue moon you come in and Carter Hart's taking, the lion's share of it all, I still think Cal Peterson starts the year if that's the approach that they're taking.
Sure. That's a big if, and I'm just
Right.
assuming they're going to 1A, 1B just based off the fact that Carter Hart's shown some concern with injuries.
Right.
And if
That was
if
what
they're
I was
gonna-
going to bring up. Is like we
Right,
forget that
right.
last year was the first time he's gone injury free in a while.
Yeah. Well,
Did
even
he
then, I
go
think he
in?
was
No,
nursing something.
Yeah, because isn't that how Urson got in?
I
Or
believe
was that
so. Or
because
might have been
Sandstrom
sick.
getting hurt?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Sick. Yeah, he was ill too.
Yeah.
Tummy.
It's a concern nonetheless. Like, if Carter Hart can stay healthy, sure, I would be comfortable saying, yeah, he's the starter.
Right.
However, there are points in time and spans over games where his play concerns me.
Right.
No one's perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say like, oh, he sucks or oh my God, he's amazing. But like, I get concerned with that because then we're going to need somebody who can be our starter essentially, because then you're promoting your backup or your 1B to the starter role or the 1A position. And then you're bringing up an AHL guy to be the 1B or the backup. So that person's going to be expected to handle the lion's share of the net play at that point.
Well, and this is probably a conversation for a different day, but like I've convinced myself that Carter Hart's not a part of this team next season.
Wow.
I really think in
I'm
some
almost
way,
there.
shape, or form that he is not the Flyers goalie start next season. Either because he doesn't want to sign an extension because of, or the Flyers feel like the timeline doesn't match up. But I just think there's so many signs pointing to the Flyers moving on without him.
I'm not there yet. I don't know if I see
No?
it. No. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, but I have that hasn't really gone into my mind.
Yeah,
I'm in the middle there.
I've convinced myself like it's bad.
Yeah. I can see it, but I'm not quite where you're at yet, John. I'm more in the middle between you
It's
guys
not even
right
that I
now.
don't think he's a capable goalie. Like I don't need Jason Martinez getting all mad at me or anything like that. But it's like
No, we know what you mean. Yeah.
right. I just think that like in terms of long-term planning, it just to me there's just too many signs that point to the Flyers are not committed to this guy long-term.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like the way I look at it from your perspective, there's too many goalies in the system for them to try to hinge their future on one guy when you have arguably two guys who could potentially be franchise goalies.
And I just think if you're set with Carter Hart, you don't take a goalie in the second and third round of a draft that you flat out said we're rebuilding. It's all about stocking the cupboard again. To me, like you could stock the cupboard in all the places.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Writing's on the wall there.
But the goal, like Carter, is an anomaly with how young he started in goal.
Sure.
Like he should be coming up. Like last year should have been his first year up in the NHL. The guys who were drafted this past year, we won't see them until like an entire other presidential
2030.
election cycle has gone through. Like
Right.
we'll get a whiff of them.
Yeah, I don't know. And then you look at Urson and Kolosov. I've always been one of Carter Hart's bigger critics, too, where I've never been able to, give him the keys to the castle. There's just been always something there.
That's just you, though. You're a critic of everybody.
Maybe I just, read something about him.
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay. Anyway, other camp battles.
Other camp battles. I'm going to bring this up and keep it kind of vague.
Okay.
I'm very interested
Forwards,
to see.
defenseman.
Well, I'll give you a hint. It's a forward.
Well, no, I thought you were just like vague.
More so
he's wearing
position in the
skates.
lineup. Like I'm curious to see how because I think it's a foregone conclusion. Tyson Forster's in the lineup opening night. No, hands down. I think he's in the lineup.
Said that about Cam York last year.
Yeah, well, I also wasn't very familiar with John Tortorella at that point, but regardless, I'm more interested to see if he ends up on the third line or if he's on the second line.
Right.
Because I think, and I think Cam Atkinson's health plays a big part in this. However, I think if he shows enough in camp, there's a strong possibility that he's on the second line and on opening night.
Do you care? I mean, like one way, I think second and third line are kind of interchangeable. If I'm being totally
Especially
honest.
on this team.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
That's
you have a first
given
line
the context of the team.
and a fourth line. Yeah, we're awesome in the fourth line. But then it's like the second and third line, I think it's much more about matchups and who's playing well. And honestly,
And chemistry.
It's chemistry. And I
Right.
bet they throw those suckers into a blender at least a half dozen times before.
Oh yeah.
I mean, hey, if you're a team with a solidified second line and third line where it's like those roles, you're most likely contending for a Stanley Cup.
Right.
News break.
It's like we're just hoping our winger's leg doesn't fall off. Like that's our barometer for success.
Yeah. One more center goes down. Jesus Christ, we're in trouble. But
Right.
no, I think it's the connotation. It's
Right.
obviously first line being the best, second the second, third the third, whatever.
Third is the one with the hairiest chest.
Jesus Christ. I would be more interested too in who he's with on those lines because chemistry is going to matter a lot this year regarding moving forward. Who's going to fit? Who are they keeping around? Like a Forrester Frost line with I don't know, Noah Cates centering, like a young line.
I
However,
want Tippett and Frost on the same line.
Tippett and Frost.
You do
Nailed
want
it.
that?
I do.
Yeah.
You want Tippett and Frost? Okay.
Yep.
And I think that too. I don't know, man. I think they might put Tippett up on the top line.
Yeah.
With-
Let's not
What,
do that yet.
Konechny and Couturier? Is that your prediction?
I think
What about Farabee?
Well, I think,
second line.
I think you have
Farabee and Forster.
Farabee,
Like that?
Forster, Farabee, Forster, Frost.
Oh,
Triple F
Holy
line.
F line. You pointed here.
Line. Dropping
Holy
F bombs, baby.
The F bomb line. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Forster, our good friend Matt Hoagland in our little group chat was like talking about camp battles and mentioned Bobby Brink and Tyson Forster. Like, I don't see Bobby Brink battling for a roster spot. I think that he's going to start with Lehigh Valley and hopefully be a midseason call up. I don't think there's a battle there. And I know Hoagie's not here to defend his argument, which is good because,
I said it 2 weeks. Sorry, go ahead, Dirk.
You're good. You're good.
I said it 2 weeks ago that as much as I want to believe in our draft picks, like I don't believe one bit of Bobby Brink hype until I actually see it. Because I've never seen it. It's a myth. Dry land is a myth.
The myth of Brink.
Myth. I take offense to that.
For me, I don't know if it's a battle, but what I'm curious to see is what Wade Allison and Igor Zamula do to get on the roster, or at least prove that they deserve to be on the roster, because neither of these guys at this point are doing anybody any favors being the 13th forward or the 7th defenseman. Like,
That's where they're going to be, in my opinion.
But in my mind, if that's what they are, then we've moved on. we
Right.
don't see them in the big picture. Like,
Absolutely.
and maybe it's more for me, Wade Allison, because it's like, I think that when he's healthy, there definitely is some potential there.
Mhm.
But that's a big if.
Right. But I am
Right.
like really intrigued to see, like, can these guys do enough to get them on the roster and not as the 13th guy or the 7th guy?
Right.
Right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Derek. Go ahead. I cut you
Uh,
off before.
No, you're fine. No, I see your point there. I think it's I don't want to say solidified, but like given the current makeup of the team, I just don't see a spot for him. I mean,
For
the
which
fourth
one,
line,
Allison or Zamula?
either of them at this
Yeah.
point. I think you've got your six defensemen. I think you've got your 12 forwards. Like I don't know, man. Like unless he just wows everybody in camp, either of them. I say he, but both of them, Zamula and Allison, unless they absolutely wow people in camp and take a spot from somebody, I just don't see it happening. I really don't.
Yeah.
Or unless Wade Allison wants to play center.
Right. I think there's something we have to keep in mind, which is like the season is a battle of attrition in a lot of ways, and like
Mhm.
we've been duped because we haven't had a lot of depth lately. If Wade Allison is our 13th forward, I don't mind that because
Absolutely.
realistically,
Someone's going to get hurt.
someone's going to
Yeah.
get hurt, and
Someone's gonna have an off
he
night.
can
Yeah.
his ceiling. He's a third line guy at best. I still don't like him on the fourth line. I feel like he's Mr. Glass. You know, he's too
Right.
fragile to go in there. But he has some offensive upside. He has some energy, all that sort of stuff. I think he's a really good third line option. Now, is he good enough? And this is where I want to flip it back a little bit. I think the biggest competition Forster is going to have is Allison. Now, I would take Forster in the lineup over Allison any day. But if someone goes down, like that's where I feel like there's an open spot is one of those two.
Well, something I'll pose. I'm sorry, Casey.
No,
were
no,
you done?
go ahead.
Something I'll pose is like, okay, let's just say one of your top 6 guys gets hurt,
Mhm.
right? Or even top 9 guys gets hurt.
Mhm.
And instead of Allison, I see a world where they're like, let's give Brink a shot.
Mhm.
Let's give Denoye a shot. Because again, we've established that this year is going to be an opportunity for the kids to show what they have.
Mhm.
Where it's
Right.
like, it wouldn't shock me if it's like, okay, you know what? The time that Allison's had, like whatever, it's been all right. Where it's like he starts getting passed by some of the younger guys who can come up and play 5 games while, you know, a more skilled player
Right.
is
A
hurt.
good point. You bring up a good point. The skill note on a player. If someone's skilled, like if a Atkinson goes down, if a Couturier goes down,
Right.
you're going to look for a guy with a higher end skill to plug that hole. If someone like Hathaway, Delorier goes down, you're not calling up your Brinks, your Foresters. Like you're going to probably call up and
A Wade Allison.
or even I'd even go as far as to say a guy like Denoye, who
Denoye.
like the high end skill isn't
Right.
to the level of a Forester, but the consistency, because he seems more like a steady Eddie type of guy.
Right.
Like,
And I think that's a scenario, Derek, where it's also like, okay, so let's say it is Denoye. Is that how you say it?
Denoye.
Yeah.
Or Allison, and you're like, oh, we still don't love him on the fourth line. It's like, no one's great on the fourth line too. Is Scott Lawton? Put Scott Lawton on the fourth line and bump this guy up to the third line, and like see where that ends up going.
I like that. Yeah.
I just. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Casey.
So I feel like it. I'm not saying that Allison's going to be a 40 goal scorer or anything like that, or anything close to what we hoped he would be. But like, I'm not ready to pull the plug on him yet because like I still think he's got. This might be the point where he ends up really surging and going.
Right.
It's when he's met with adversity. He knows that this is a high stakes season for him. Like he absolutely understands that. So he's going to want to stay healthy. He's going to give it his all. So I mean, he's in a good position. I think he could definitely go out there and do well. Are his bones going to hold up?
Right.
I mean, putting it frankly.
I also think about it this way too, where like, again, it comes back to potential, right? And I think they want to see potential. And maybe this group has seen enough of Wade Allison where they want to see what they have in other players, where it's not necessarily what Allison can't do. They just want to see what else someone else is capable of. And another thing that we have to consider, and I don't know if people actually put stock into this, but I do, is the regime a player was drafted.
Yep. He was a Hextall guy. Correct?
2 regimes behind him. where
Right.
Danny Briere was involved in certain drafts.
Not
With
that one.
Fletcher, nothing with Ron Hextall, obviously, where it's like
Mhm.
there is no
There's no sentimental ties.
Sentimental ties to this guy.
I think it all comes down to if Tort sees value in him or not. That's the ultimate trump
And
card.
listening to him talk about him, I've never been convinced that Tort's really values.
I think the only comment I remember is like he's got to stay healthy. Like that's the only thing
Last
I
year.
remember him saying.
Right.
He
And
seems on the
skating
surface like a
vertical, right?
Tortorella guy. Like
Right.
on the surface, he seems like a Tortorella guy, a hard worker, hard nosed guys, gets into the corners, things like that. It's just the health, man. Like that's a huge issue.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we covered a good bit of training camp battles. Is there anything else you guys want to cover? I mean, we talked on Forrester, we talked on Zamula, Allison, we talked on goalie as well. Anything else appealing to you guys?
Hold on. Can we go back to Zamula real quick?
Yeah.
Let's go back to Zamula.
I don't think we really
Not really,
dove into
no.
that, but
Is it worth it?
so I'm on the flip side of that. I think we need to get an honest look at Zamula in like legitimate games in the NHL to figure out what he is.
I agree with you. I just don't know how it happens. Like if
Mark Stahl.
if you're looking at the depth chart right now,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like who does he fit with that makes sense? Who is taken out?
Right.
I think there has to be a way that this guy starts the season, as a defenseman who's playing a lot. Like if he's the seventh defenseman, okay, fine. But are you every other game switching with Nick Seeler or whatever?
Mhm.
Like,
Right.
that's fine. But I think that I agree with you, Casey. I'm having a hard time fitting him into the lineup.
Yeah.
Mhm.
No, it's fair. And I have the same issue, but like I think he's one of those guys where it's like, okay, you've grown this guy. Now it's time to see that he's no longer a kid. And
No.
you got to give him at least an honest shot of a 10-game run in the NHL. And if he can't hold, then you know your answer. And
The same premise. I'm sorry, finish your thought there.
Go. I'm good.
Yep, the same premise though as Allison. I mean, this is a guy who's in his third regime now, and the regime in now has no ties to him.
Yeah.
And this guy was never drafted.
Exactly. He was brought in as an undrafted free agent. So, I mean, I could see a world in
Igor
which
meet
Tortorella and Briere are like, no, like it doesn't matter anymore. Like, I don't care what we have in him. Like, it's one more year, he's done, gone, whatever. We wipe our hands of him.
Mm-hmm. I kind of feel the same way about Tanner Lazinski too.
Oh,
Yeah,
that guy's just put out the
I'm done
pasture.
with
I don't
him.
think
Tired of it. Like 3 years in a row with this shit.
And if you want to, if we want to give Allison a hard time, like saying that people are going to jump over him, I mean, they're already stomping on.
Yeah, that
Lazinski's
guy's the
head.
doormat.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a lot more we're going to see when it comes to training camp as it progresses, and I think that I'm going to at least attempt to to follow it a bit better than we have, just because I mean the camp battles are incredibly intriguing. Given the fact that really nothing is solidified aside from what I think is like the fourth line. That's the only thing right now that everybody's like, it's pretty much set.
It's so interesting though, Derek, because I think that for the most part, the players are solidified, minus maybe one or two. It's just what line are they on? What pairing are they on to me? But in terms of surprises who might make the roster, I don't, aside from, God, I don't know, because I don't think Forster's a surprise. I don't think there's any. I think that who's going to make the roster?
Which is the reason why they'd be a surprise, John. You don't even know about it yet.
It's another Artem Anisimov, No, it's
I mean, whisperer Artem Anisimov.
Yeah. Once they start broadcasting some of the games that I'll be able to watch it too, it'll be a little bit easier. But also with a child due any day now, it might get a little more hard, a little more difficult. So we'll see how that goes.
Rock and roll, baby.
Yeah. So that's it then. Matt, Casey, let everybody know where they're going to find you, where you don't respond.
You can't find me. Pod Street Casey on X. On X.
Casey on X. Did you hear us our whole shtick last episode?
I didn't last to the end. That's what
we were talking about Casey on X. I'd go back and give that a listen because we were having some fun with you being on X.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely worth a listen.
Is Casey on X? Oh my God, it's possible.
Is it 2004? Then yeah.
All right, John, what do you have to say?
Have a good night.
All right, fellas, ladies, everybody listening. Until next week, we'll see you then.
All right. Bye now.
now.
That's my